And we are live. Hello, everybody. How are y'all doing this wonderful evening? How are you doing this wonderful evening?
Good.
Well, carry on. It was her idea for the show tonight, so I will let her lead on.
I feel like it's always my idea.
Maybe.
I feel like I do all the planning.
So first of all, for the ones that are just now tuning in, we are streaming on the church's Facebook. Pastor asked us to do so. So there might be some of y'all that haven't seen our streams before, but we started doing a couples ministry. I think it's very important that a family prays together, praises together, reads the Word together. Be spiritual, everything spiritual together. I think that's one of the strongest way to strengthen a marriage, a relationship, is through God. And so we decided to start a couples ministry to kind of go over things that, just stuff that mainly deals with couples and stuff that folks can struggle with, and other things that we can say to help. So tonight's topic.
Well, hang on, and since we're on the church page and we haven't really talked about this, and a big thing behind marriage ministry is marriage is the most important relationship that God has given us on this earth. Husbands and wives are, that's meant to be the strongest bond that you have here on earth. And I think so many times, especially as parents, we can begin to focus so much on our children, which is important, obviously, but we can begin to put that focus so much on that we only become mom and dad, and we're no longer, I'm no longer being the wife that I'm supposed to be, and he's no longer being the husband that he's supposed to be, because we're so focused on being parents. And we really want to express to couples how important that relationship is meant to be. God didn't mean for us to just live together and raise children. He meant for our marriage to be a close relationship. He meant for that bond to be there. And that's why I think that's why divorce is so common, is because people don't take the time to build that bond with their husband and wife. And we want to talk about how marriage is amazing when it's fun, and marriage is amazing when it's great, but it's the things that you work through and the things that you go through. James and I were reading something today that said, my husband is not my best friend, because it was talking about how that was that's like putting it so lightly that, we have best friends and we have people that we go to for things, but they're not as invested in our lives as we are. When I make a decision, it's going to impact him in a way that it doesn't impact anybody else. So we just want to talk about how important that relationship is.
Yeah, I think that was great, that thing she sent me to read today, when it, that said, my husband is not my best friend. And I saw the title and I was kind of, wait, what?
He was like, rude.
Yeah, rude. But after I started reading it, I got to realize that she was talking about how it was just such a massive understatement, that her best friend knows that she doesn't eat shrimp, but...
Not me, I eat shrimp.
Right, no, yeah, she eats shrimp. But, I'm just saying what she talked about. But her husband knows that, that certain things of that shrimp that she's allergic to, and other things that she doesn't eat, and the things that happened in the past, and, just all that more in depth than just your best friend would know. But yeah, it was a really good read. So, tonight's topic.
So tonight's topic is and some of you all probably have not seen this because you haven't been with us long, but we have talked about kind of God's structure for the house. The man is the head of the house. The wife is to be submissive to the husband and that sort of thing. And I think as women, especially in 2021, we can feel like we're letting our gender down by falling into that role. And I know that a lot of men take advantage of that role and take kind of a dictatorship role, and they use the Bible and they use church as kind of as kind of like giving them permission to do that sort of thing. So in our Bible study that we were doing this time, it was talking about the husband's responsibilities in that role. And I think it's important to remember that if you're going to be the spiritual leader in your house, there's a standard that you have to take. It's not because James is in the ministry. It's not because James is a preacher. It's none of those things why James has to be the holiest one in the house. It's because he's the spiritual leader of this house. He has to set that standard. Every single standard in this house, he has to set. So I'm going to read some of these.
And real quick, before she starts reading that, I also want to say to those that haven't been here before that we do this as an open forum. So make sure you type in chat. Let us know that you're here. We're using Restream to make sure that we get to her Facebook and the church's Facebook and YouTube. So a lot of times the showing who's watching doesn't work properly. So definitely let us know you're here down in the chat, and if you have any comments or any questions or anything, or if you just want to put your thoughts in, please go ahead and comment. Let us know.
Yes, because we've been married a really long time, almost 16 years, but there are people that have been married longer than us, and there have been people married shorter time spans than us who they still have some good things to offer. There are things that probably being together 17 years, there are probably things that we're not doing anymore that we're like, oh, we should probably get back to that. We're neglecting this part of our marriage. So definitely. Okay, so this starts by saying a husband living an unholy life cannot help his wife with her holiness. If husbands are commanded to have a sanctifying influence on their wives, it only makes sense that each husband must maintain a high standard of holiness in his own life. It is not the wife's responsibility to establish the spiritual atmosphere of the home. That responsibility belongs to the husband. So the husband is responsible for deciding, do you want to do some of those, of what your responsibilities are? You can go pretty much off that list because that pretty much tells you.
Yeah, there's a list here that's basically, that when we went over it earlier, sums it up. Husbands are responsible for what comes into the home, what influences the family, what the family watches, what the family listens to, how the family talks or jokes, what company the family keeps, how the family dresses, how the family spends their time, what the family does recreationally, and how involved the family is in the church. And like when we were discussing this earlier, and Danielle made the comment as far as but not being a dictator. There is a fine line, and there's a difference. That I think it is the responsibility of the husband to set the standard of the family, but to also be above that standard of the family.
Husbands, you can't like half-naked pictures of women on Instagram. You can't.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, it's just you can't tell your wife that she needs to hold a standard and dress holy while you're liking pictures of girls in bikinis on Instagram. You can't do it.
Absolutely. Anything that I've ever been involved with in my entire life that had anything to do with leadership is always expected to be above the rest. Always. Above and beyond. They're always held to a higher standard. And it's not any different when it comes to leading your house spiritually. You have to set that bar, and everyone, when it comes to spirituality, there is no do as I say, not as I do. Especially when it comes to your children, because regardless of what you say, your children are going to follow what you do and how you do it. So you setting that standard for yourself and living above and beyond that sets the bar for the rest of your family. And they're able to see, okay, this is the level he lives at. This is the level he expects me to live at. It's a lot easier for them to strive to be above that level as well when they see you reaching those marks, right?
Yeah, and I think that that's important for husbands and fathers to remember is, especially we have a little girl, and Kaylee is a daddy's girl for sure. She loves her daddy more than she loves anybody. And that's what he has to remember as a husband is he's setting the standard for the way Kaylee's going to allow herself to be treated by her husband. He's setting the standard for what she's going to expect the spiritual leader and the man in her life to be. And he's also obviously setting the standard for Ethan on how he's going to be as a husband, and the way he's going to treat his wife, and the way he's going to treat his kids, and his spiritual life. So
I feel sorry for the boys when my daughter starts dating, because not a single one's going to be good enough. I've spoiled her rotten.
She
but
is.
I don't think that's a bad thing, especially when it comes to my little girl.
Yeah, and I think that as the church, we all agree that there are certain things that just should not come into your house. There are things that as the spiritual leader that he cannot allow. If somebody wants to come stay at our house and they're not married and they want to sleep in the same bed, that's his responsibility to say no. It's
right.
him who has to set those standards in our house. So that's a big responsibility.
It is. The way I look at it is, I have no control over the world, the things that happen in the world. But I do have control over things that happen in my house. When it comes to that, you have to set that standard. That you can't do anything in the outside world. I mean, it's chaotic, it's hectic, it's crazy, but when it comes to things like that, you can say, okay, I can't stop that from happening out there, but I can keep it from coming in here. And I think that's a major way that we need to protect our family. I think that's also, one of the things as far as the man's role is protection. But, a lot of people think, it's to protect them from bad people doing bad things, but it's also protecting them from the world. Mm-hmm. The things that we could allow into the home could damage our family spiritually, physically, mentally, so that is another way that, as the head of the household, that we can protect our family.
Okay. Women are leading at Revival Church tomorrow too, just so y'all know this. But
yes, we're very excited about that.
Women, don't come for me right now, but the serpent tempted Eve in the garden because Eve was the weaker sex. That's the way God made it. Adam was meant to protect Eve. And that's what a husband is meant to do. The wife, as the weaker sex, is going to often get attacked before the husband does. So I think that we need to remember that the world and the devil and the enemy, and a lot of times they're going to attack the wife in the relationship, the kids in the relationship. They're often going to attack the weakest person. So, and I know that some of those things were controversial. I know that a lot of people don't want to hear that your husband gets to controversial.
Controversial.
Yeah. Versial. Where's Pastor?
We're in Kentucky. It's controversial.
Like how the family dresses. I know some people don't like that, but the family or the company that the family keeps. There are times that my kids don't like it when Daddy says, "No, you can't be friends with those people," or "No, those people can't come to our house." And it's not, obviously, we're not telling our children to be mean to people. We're not telling our kids to mistreat people. But there are certain people who influence you in such a way that that's not the company that you keep. So,
right.
So we tell our children to be the church, but yeah. Let's see.
I think how involved the family is in church, I think, is a big one.
Yes, I can tell you so many years I went to church without James.
That's what I was just fixing to say.
And look, y'all, I was raised in this. But there would be Sunday mornings, I would be like, I'm not serving today. I'm not doing anything today. I don't have anything going on today. I'm not teaching Sunday school. I'm not doing anything today. I think I'm just going to stay home. And I would do that. And my kids would do it more. The kids would want to stay home with him more often than I would do it. But there would be times that I, as an adult, as a wife, as a mother who knows that my children need to be in church, there were times that I would look for an excuse not to go.
Yeah.
There were years and years and years I did that. And I mean, obviously, my family served in different capacities all the time, but there were plenty of Sundays that we just didn't go because we just weren't that committed.
Right.
So, did you want to say something else? I didn't know you were going to say that.
No, that was basically what I was going to say.
That I laid out of church all the time?
Not that necessarily, but, I wasn't in church. That was before I'd come to know who God was. And I wasn't here to lead spiritually. And, I think we all suffered for that. But luckily, I did get into church, and, it was a long time that my wife was the one that tried to get me to go to church, and, just all of a sudden, nobody had to make me come to church. I wanted to come to church. And I think that was when that shift really started to happen. I wanted to come to church. I wanted to serve. I wanted to get closer to God. And, it came to the point that, my wife looked at me and she's like, okay, now I can look to you as the spiritual leader of the household. She got
and
to
that. And that didn't happen right away.
Right.
There needed to be some spiritual maturity there, obviously, in order for me to get to that point where I trusted him to make the decisions, and I trusted him to be the spiritual leader, and that was a big role for me to relinquish, because I had always been the spiritual leader in the house. I had always been the spiritual leader for our kids, so that was really hard to relinquish. But when he says there was a shift in our entire family. Like, the kids, the difference in them is just night and day. It's and they, like, our kids have been in church for a long time.
Right.
I've always felt like our children needed to be in church. Our kids have been in Sunday school for a long time.
And I think also the big thing is to find the right church for you.
It is.
And I'm not talking about I'm just talking about finding the right church for you, period. The kids didn't want to go. There was times she didn't want to go. I never wanted to go. It just wasn't my thing. But when you find that right church, you find the right people there that you feel welcome and you feel the presence of God, most importantly, that's huge. Because that's when you really start to feel the presence of God and you start to feel God working in your life, it's going to be one of those things that you're going to want more of.
Yeah.
You're going to want to go back to church.
And look at environment too. Environment, like, the Spirit of God is first. That's the most important thing. But look at environment too. I know that for us, having all of our couples are kind of in the same age range. We're all in our 30s, early 40s. Our kids are around the same age. It's just, when you can worship with people who are in the same season of life as you, it's really easy to build those connections, because guess what? When my teenage kids are going through something, chances are somebody else's teenagers are going through it, or they have gone through it, or whatever. And we have a nice age range there at Revival Church. Brianna is 19 all the way down to Chadwick, who is 1.5. So we have a nice big age range of people there, or kids, I mean. And I think that it's important to find people kind of in your same season of life. And of course, like, we have Sister Anna, who's like everybody's adopted grandmother. But the majority of us are kind of in that age range to where you can really build those connections. There have been times that my kids have been going through things, and I have texted their youth pastor and said, I need you at my house when I get there this afternoon. And they were there. So I think that's important to remember, that you need people who can identify with where you are, spiritually, and sometimes just in your regular life. Sometimes people's basic needs need to be met before you can meet their spiritual needs.
Right, absolutely. And this didn't end up turning into a commercial for our church.
It's not. But
it's not just our church. If anybody out there watching, wants to find a better church, of course, number one, I'm going to introduce you to my church. But if that doesn't work for you, that is perfectly okay. I will help you find a good church that preaches the truth, and that you'll feel the presence of God.
Right.
It isn't just our church. that's the whole point of this whole couples ministry, is to reach out.
I mean, we're awesome, but
right, we are awesome. Some of us.
Some more than others. I'm just kidding. So the title of this today is "A Husband Gets the Wife He Prepares for Himself," and we have all heard the whole thing. If you give a woman groceries, she will make you a meal. Like, whatever you give your wife is what you're going to get out of her. Whatever you do, that's what you're going to get out of life. If my husband comes home from work with a Fountain Diet Coke in his hand, he's going to get a happy wife. If my husband comes home from work,
and we all know happy wife means happy life.
If my husband comes home from work and gives me bad attitude, he's going to get a worse attitude back.
I have to go through the house and hide all the kitchenware.
Efficient. I have struggled with that word every time I've said it today.
What word?
Ephesians. I hope Ephesians is not in my message tomorrow, but I don't remember. Ephesians 5:27 continues the description of Christ sanctifying and cleansing the church, that he might present her to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she should be holy and without blemish. There is a tremendous truth contained in these words. Christ does what he does in verse 26, sanctifying and cleansing the church, so that he can obtain for himself the glorious church, or bride, described in verse 27, that has no spot or wrinkle, but is holy and without blemish. The ESV says, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor. Here is the simplest way to sum it all up. Christ gets the church he prepares for himself. So, we always use this, that our relationship with God is often described as the church being the bride of Christ. And it always talks about how God prepares for himself the church, and he makes us what he wants us to be, and he forms us and fashions us through sanctification into what he wants from us.
Right.
You have anything to add before
No, keep going.
Since this is again a picture for husbands and wives, what else is the Apostle Paul implying by this truth? Just as Jesus gets the church he prepares for himself, husbands generally get the wives they prepare for themselves. Wives respond well to love, holiness, and obedience to God's word. When husbands treat their wives forgivingly, lovingly, and tenderly, they will generally receive more forgiving, loving, and tender wives. When husbands treat their wives unforgivingly, unlovingly, and harshly, they generally find themselves with wives who are less forgiving, loving, and tender. Rather than be cruel or harsh toward wives, some husbands are more likely to be apathetic or indifferent. And I think that's really common, the apathetic and indifference. And obviously people think that it's better than being harsh, but...
Yeah. And hello, Sister Suzanne. How are you doing this evening?
They take no interest in their wives. They do not invest in their wives. They are often annoyed with them. And James and I were reading this earlier, I was like, oh, annoyed. I felt that one.
Right.
He's like, what is that supposed to mean? You do get annoyed at me. I'm sure God,
I do.
Yeah, I'm sure God gets annoyed with us sometimes.
A lot.
We will discuss, no, we're not discussing that. Husbands need to make an effort to know or understand their wives. This is what allows wives to blossom and grow. When husbands are uninterested in their wives, they end up with cold, bitter, frustrated wives. Earlier, we talked about a husband's responsibility regarding his wife's sanctification. Another way to look at this is husbands are responsible for the wives they get for themselves. It is a simple equation. If a husband is helping a wife with her sanctification and spiritual cleansing, he is going to get a sanctified and cleansed wife. Gosh, that's a big responsibility.
Yeah.
It's a responsibility. And talking about sanctification and cleansing and spiritual maturity and those sort of things, as someone who was...
Our dog wants in.
As someone who was raised in church, my sanctification, my spirituality, is so much different now than it was even, I know that as a teenager, I guess prior to the past few years, I always felt like as a teenager, I was closer to God than I ever was before I was and that sort of thing. But I don't think that that's the case anymore. I think that since you got in church, like, my relationship with the Lord has changed so much that, and I think that that has something to do with it.
Yeah, I do think that the people around you can often affect how your relationship with God is too. You know, like you just said, when I wasn't in church, the kids didn't really want to go to church. You know, your relationship now with God is so much better now that we're all involved. You know, that we all need that rock to hold us up sometimes. And when that rock just happens to be as spiritual as you, you know, it helps. I think it's important. You know, when Jesus said, go and make disciples, you know, I firmly believe that it starts with our family. We have to start with our family. You know, our families are who's important to us. If we can't reach our family, how are we expected to reach people that we don't know? We have to be there to be at the beginning for our family.
And I think that goes back to the whole thing with my husband is not my best friend. Like, my friends, they care about my spiritual maturity. My friends care about that, sure. My friends probably care about my financial situation too. But if I go out and buy a new car, it's not going to affect my friends like it's going to affect my husband. It's not going to affect my friends' financial. Just like if my spiritual life suffers, my friend might be sad for me, but it's not going to affect her spiritual life like it affects yours. And if you suffer spiritually, people might get upset and people might pray for you and people might mourn with you and that sort of thing, but it's not going to affect them like it affects me. And I think it goes back to what happens in your house, what happens in your relationship, what happens with the person you're married to. And look, guys, I know this is couples ministry, but a boyfriend and girlfriend, that's not your husband, that's not your wife, and that those sort of things, what I do, every single thing that I do affects him, and even more so, everything he does affects me, especially spiritually. So I think that we need to remember that husbands, that like your husband, your wife, the person you're married to, that is a relationship that is incomparable. You can't compare it to your relationship with your mother, with your father, with your kids, with your boyfriend, with your girlfriend, with your fiance. It doesn't matter. You can't compare that relationship with anybody else because no one is as affected by your actions as the person you're married to.
Amen.
Nothing else?
Nope. Keep trucking.
So aside from the fact that God commands it, one great reason for a husband to take his wife to church, read the word with her, pray with her, and help her grow spiritually is so that he will receive a more spiritually mature wife. What kind of qualities will be produced as a result? Galatians 5:22 through 23 record. And Pastor preached about this on Wednesday night. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And those are all things that they're important in the church. They're important in the workplace. We know that we have to treat our coworkers with gentleness and kindness and long-suffering and patience and all of those things. But that starts in your own home. That starts with the people that you love the most. Conversely, husbands who do not lead their wives spiritually will get wives who are less spiritual. What is the opposite of spiritual? Fleshly. Galatians 5:19 through 22 lists the works of the flesh, and here are just a few. Hatred, contentions, jealousies, outbursts of wrath, selfish ambitions, dissensions, envy, and even adultery. How many husbands see these works in their wives because they themselves are poor spiritual leaders? How many wives might be more spiritually mature if their husbands were praying for them as well as praying and reading the Bible with them? Tragically, I have listened to some husbands talk terribly about their wives, when in fact they have simply received the wives that they have prepared for themselves. Anything on that? And I think that that's so important. Husbands, I don't care if it is your mama, do not talk bad about your wife.
Agreed.
Wives, I don't care if it's your child, do not talk bad about your husband. James and I can have an argument, and I might text Randy and be like, gosh, he's an idiot. But not in such a way that, like, she knows I love this idiot. But if every time we got into a fight or an argument, if it was serious, and I called my mama up eventually she's gonna be like, leave that dude.
Right.
Don't stay with him. And every marriage has disagreements and things like that. But every single time you air that out for other people, it damages your relationship. So don't talk bad about your spouse to other people. Especially, James does not need to go to work and talk to some single woman about problems that we've been having.
Right.
I do not need to go to work, and I work in a male-dominated environment, and tell my coworkers how much my husband is crappy. So
Not that I'm crappy.
No, but if he was, that's not the environment for that.
Right.
So
I agree. 100%.
Galatians 6 and 7 tells us, do not be deceived. God is not mocked, for whatever a man sows, that he will also reap. The context of this verse is giving to the church, but the principle also applies to a husband's relationship with his wife. Husbands generally reap what they sow in marriage. If husbands will invest in their wives by sowing seeds of love and interest, if they will plant spiritual seeds of sanctification, they will reap what they have sown. Let's summarize by keeping two truths in mind. Foremost, husbands ought to sanctify and cleanse their wives because that is what God commands, and husbands will be held accountable for doing so. Husbands ought to love their wives and lead them well so that they might have loving spiritual wives. The good news is that God's command to husbands benefits them as much as it benefits their wives. A husband who loves his wife as God commands will bring a great blessing to himself. And I think that's a very elementary concept. Like, the better husband you are, the more spiritual you are, the better you lead, obviously. The nicer I'm going to be, the better wife I'm going to be,
Right.
the closer to a Proverbs 31 woman I will become. So,
Right.
Anything?
No, you keep going.
Well, I mean, hey Heather. See, Heather's not showing up there. And I'm just now seeing that she's here. That's weird.
Yeah, sometimes it just doesn't work.
It's weird. We're trying to look at comments both on the church page and on our page, and we're not seeing everything. So,
but no, I agree with everything that she said.
So, husbands, it's kind of one of those things that I'm not going to say as a wife, I'm not going to say as a wife it lets me off the hook to where there are things that I don't have to do, but that takes a whole lot of pressure off of you as a wife if you just allow your husband to lead you spiritually. I think that it takes a lot of the responsibility off of you and a lot of the pressure. Just be a wife. And husbands, just remember that not to be a dictator. I can't get dressed to go out and my husband be like, go change. All the while he's doing things that, he's wearing shorty shorts telling me to change. Not that. See, that my example made sense in my head, but then when I said it, I was like, shorty shorts though?
If anybody ever sees me wearing shorty shorts, once you get past the heart attack that you have, please.
Because of white legs.
Smack me. Something, yeah.
Lord.
Let's all hope and pray I never wear shorty shorts.
I think a better example would be, like, there are certain things that you just, as a spiritual leader in this house, cannot do if you expect your family not to do it.
Right, absolutely.
You have to lead. You have to lead from the front. You can't.
As like I said, the leader is always held to a higher standard than everyone else. And us as the husbands, us as the fathers, we are the leader of the household, mainly spiritually. We have to, if we're going to set the bar for our wife and kids, we have to make sure that we exceed that bar. Not only to show that, hey, I'm not trying to set a bar too high for you, but saying that I'm willing to go above and beyond that, this is where, the family needs to be. But we have to lead by example. Just like she said, we can't, go on Instagram and Facebook and be, liking pictures of women in bikinis and then get mad at our wives, if they do something similar. It's not the rules for thee, not for me kind of society we're living in. This is being the spiritual head of the household.
And I think we look at it and we think, obviously, in our minds, we look at, I want this to be clear that this lesson, this message, this standard is for all men. This standard has nothing to do with the fact if your husband is in ministry or your husband's not in ministry,
Right.
if your husband preaches on Sunday, if your husband teaches Sunday school, if your husband leads the song service. This spiritual headship, this ministry, the mission field that is your home, that is for every single husband that has the Holy Ghost. It is for every single husband that says that they are spiritually leading their house. It is for every single husband that says God has put this structure in order and I'm going to follow it. And if you're not following that structure, you're not being obedient to the Word of God. So, and those standards are for every single husband. It's not just for husbands who are in any sort of leadership role in your church. You can sit on a pew and you are still held to these exact same standards in your house as the pastor and anybody else in that church. So I think
Absolutely. It's a great
I think
point.
that's important to remember.
Yep.
Not now, when you're a leader in the church and you're held to a higher standard, that's completely different. These are this is the bare minimum, guys. The bare minimum.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
what standards you are held to in your church or whatever, that's your pastor. That's not us. But these are standards for a household. These are standards for a marriage.
Yep. Absolutely. I think that was a good one. You got anything else?
I do not think I have anything else. Anybody have any questions, comments, anything they want to add? I'm trying to watch people on different.
Yeah, we're trying to look for
things.
comments to make sure we catch them all.
You're on the church page. I'm on my own page. So I think we're seeing everything. People aren't commenting on YouTube, are they?
I don't think so. I don't think not very many people know we have a YouTube.
We do have a YouTube, y'all.
Yes, we do have a YouTube. Make sure you like our YouTube channel. Just look up the church, Revival Church of Katie's. It's on
Church
YouTube.
is tomorrow. Sunday school at 10.
Yep, Sunday school at 10 a.m. Our Adult Connect class is at 10 a.m. I didn't look to see who was leading it tomorrow. She's leading it tomorrow. But as she mentioned before, tomorrow's service is being led by all the ladies of the church. So yeah, they'll be speaking to us and singing to us and teaching us. And
Not singing to y'all. We're singing to Jesus.
well, yeah, that's what I meant. But yeah, it's gonna be an amazing service. Looking forward to it. For any of the men that are, I don't think anybody's currently watching, but that goes back and watch this. We've changed our date for our men's prayer and gathering to March 27th. That's going to give us time to be better prepared, and maybe the snow. It was rough. A lot of roads are still bad. So we did get our parking lot at the church cleared. So if y'all come to church tomorrow, shouldn't have any issues getting in the driveway.
March 6th, we have rescheduled our couples banquet for March 6th. I guess we're not at the point where we're going to call it a Valentine banquet anymore since Valentine is gone, but it is a date night. I know that James and I were talking about this earlier, or last night maybe, about how we do not get nearly enough date nights. And our kids are 12 and 15. So for us, it's just kind of mom guilt, dad guilt, leaving them, going out, spending time together.
We've always taken them everywhere.
But it's so important. And they can be there with you, only we will have childcare, and we have a family activity center, so we will have childcare in one area, and then we will have the banquet in another area. We'll have pizza and things like that for them. There will be chicken or steak for the adults, and it's always fantastic food. We're not going to give you some cheap, gross steak and all that sort of thing. So if you're interested in that, just let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that's it.
We have games. work on your marriage. There's
Mm-hmm.
lots of laughing, and a lot of times we
always have a good time when we do that.
We talk about things that happened on early in our marriage, and a lot of us were not in church when we first got married. So that's always good for a laugh and to remember,
Mm-hmm.
And it's very I think it's important to see that there are other people who have a past, and there are other people who did things in their marriage sometimes that they're not exactly proud of. There are things that that happen in marriage before you get into church that that maybe aren't the way you would do them today. So, and I think to see other couples in church who are living for God together and God has blessed their marriages, to know that they went through some things, and they went through some things that maybe would have broken them, and maybe you're going through those things right now and you don't think there's any hope. And I think that the couples banquet gives us that opportunity to show you that, look, like, we laugh about it now. It's funny now, but it wasn't funny when we were going through it.
Right.
But we've been through it, and we got through it, and we got through those periods of life where we were raising children and it wasn't fun, and we felt like we were living with roommates and not really married, and just to show you how much fun it can be on the other side of that. And the Valentine banquet, couples banquet, are you tired of me talking?
No.
Oh.
What?
You just, I don't know, you got to look on your face like, girl, hush. The couples banquet gives us that opportunity that you're not going to get in a church service. You're not going to get in the adult forum. You're not going to get that opportunity to see couples who have had real raw problems. And now we laugh about it because we have come out the other side of it so much stronger, and we just love the Lord, and we love each other, and our kids are blessed because of the marriage that we have. It's funny. I know it's easy to look at people from the outside and be like, their marriage isn't like mine, but I'll tell y'all something. Our pastor's wife was at our house last week, and I was so mad. My husband was being the biggest jerk ever, like she will tell you. And I was so frustrated at him. And those are the type of things that at the Valentine banquet, I'm doing it right now. But at the Valentine banquet, I will just bust him out for what he did. And at that point, like the other night when he was kind of being a jerk, it wasn't funny. But now in this moment, it's funny. Like, I was really upset over a Diet Coke. And
I didn't want to go to the store.
He knows that he was being...
I was being a butt.
Yeah, I was going to say, can I call you that on the church Facebook?
I was being a butt.
So I think that it's important to remember that this is not a perfect marriage at all. Like, there are days he's not my best friend because he gets on my nerves. And there are days that, I need to text my friends and vent about him. But, so I think the Valentine couples banquet, whatever you want to call it, date night, just gives us that opportunity in a more laid back, relaxed environment to be like, look, I know your husband can be a jerk sometimes, mine too.
Right.
And that's not in the sense that we were talking about earlier, where you're bashing them to your family about serious stuff. And like, there are some things that are between James and I, and there are some things in our marriage that no matter what, there are things in our marriage that are nobody else's business, period. There are things in our marriage that are between the two of us and nobody ever needs to know about it because this is our marriage. And obviously if you're in marriage counseling or whatever, that could be different, but that was my plug for the couples event. It's funny. It is.
It is. It's a good time. Great food. Great people. So. Yeah.
And like, we just laugh. It's good. So, if nobody has anything, I think we've given people time to comment, ask questions or whatever. I think we are.
Yeah, I think we're done. We're a little more than 30 minutes in.
Done for today.
Appreciate y'all stopping by and hanging out. So yeah, we will start doing this stream every Saturday, 6 o'clock, and we will start putting it on the church page. Pastor asked us to do so, so we will do that. Again, thank y'all for stopping by. Love every one of y'all. Hope to see y'all at church.
And if you watch this later and you still want to comment, we will interact with you through comments and
we're all
sort of thing.
We're all available if you ever need anyone to talk to. Feel free to reach out and on Facebook or at church, anywhere. We're free to help or talk or whatever. So that's it.
All right, yeah. I think we're good.